Hello everyone, welcome to MwM Unfiltered Episode 2. Today I'm joined by my dad, John Collins, to talk about the hypocrisy of the modern audience and the two films that we think show that the best, that being Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, released in 2016, and Spider-Man No Way Home, released in 2021. We're both going to share our initial reactions to the film, what we think that shows about the movies and the studio system now, and what's going on really with the audience and movies nowadays. But without further delay, let's get started. So, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, released in 2016. What did you think of the movie when you first watched it?
Well, you remember what I said?
Yeah.
I said it was one of the best superhero movies I'd ever seen.
Yes.
Which surprised you.
Yes, it did.
Right. Yeah, so do you want me to tell you why I thought that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just looked at the movie. I was going into it as just a movie, right? I didn't really have any preconceived ideas about what it was going to be. I like Batman, Superman, and I watched all that stuff growing up. So I thought it was, it's dark and gritty. After all, it is Batman versus Superman, so it had to be a little bit more serious. So I just thought they did a great job. I loved how they had Batman kind of, he was kind of losing touch with reality all along the way. And, Superman was just doing his thing, and you could kind of see how they started to be at odds with each other. But I thought they did it perfectly. I think it was a great movie.
Okay, so neither of us watched the film when it came out in 2016. We were too busy concerned about Captain America Civil War, which came out 2 months, I think, after.
Okay.
But I saw it, I would say, mid-2017. And when I first watched it, I was not hating it the way that some people did, or I think most people did when it first came out, but I was very harsh on it. I didn't understand what they were doing with Batman. I didn't get why they did what they did with Superman, and a bunch of other stuff in the movie that I just wasn't understanding. And I didn't watch it anymore at all until stuff about the Snyder-cut started coming out, and people were getting hyped about that. I decided to rewatch it and give it another chance. That is when you watched it for the first time.
Right.
And I was very surprised about how I missed everything that it was trying to do the first time. Of course, I was a lot younger then. Mm-hmm. But seeing it from a different perspective really changed how I saw this very explosive superhero epic that Zack Snyder was trying to do.
Right. And one thing, too, about Batman is that I've always seen Batman as sort of a tough guy. He's a vigilante, after all. So he's kind of operating outside the law. And so I think this movie really showed that well. And I really liked that part of it. That he was taking the law into his own hands and, doing whatever he needed to do. And that was good. Because that's kind of how I've always seen Batman.
Yes, and that ties into the fact that people, when the movie came out in 2016, people that would have been my age now, a bit younger, a bit older, their definitive interpretations of Batman would have been the Dark Knight trilogy from 2005 to 2012, and the Batman Arkham games, 2008 to 2015. Both of those properties interpret Batman as someone who does not kill. Both properties have moments where the character says, I will not kill, I'm not going to kill, this isn't the way I should do things. So that is Batman for those people. And when they see another version of Batman come in, and he is machine gunning criminals down with the Batmobile and driving through them in a very awesome scene, I will say, that horrifies them. And they're disgusted. And they don't, because they're not used to it. They don't know what to do. So all they can do is be critical towards it.
Right. Well, you also have to see the whole story is about what's happening to Batman in his mind, right? His mind is changing. And so he's going down this road, going into this place where he's kind of losing his grasp on reality. And so when that happens to anybody in life, they start doing things that maybe they wouldn't necessarily do. And so, maybe he decided, I have to go this far with these guys right now because that's what it takes. And so he didn't have the restraint maybe that he normally would have, and maybe he shouldn't. He shouldn't have had that restraint in this particular instance. And as you can see, it worked out well because of what he did.
Yes. And that ties into something that I didn't understand even the second time I watched it, but as I heard more of what other people had to say about why the movie was better than most people thought, and what other people need to understand about this movie is that if you don't understand that Batman is the villain of the movie, for the first 2 acts anyway, in Act 3 he does that turnaround, you are not going to understand what's going on, because if you think the movie is presenting Batman as the good guy, then you will also think the movie is saying that it is okay for him to go around branding people, shooting people, and being very brutal. But the movie isn't saying that. The movie doesn't think it's okay.
Right. It's just showing, here's what's happened to him, here's what's happened to his mind. He's believing things that aren't true, aren't real. He's being manipulated, really. But he's believing those things, and it takes him to a place that maybe he didn't want to go to. But the movie showed that process really well. It's good.
And of course, when it comes to people changing their opinions, I think when the buzz around the Snyder-cut first started coming out, and it was officially announced that it would be released, people were not only rewatching Man of Steel, but also BVS. Mm-hmm. Man of Steel always had this, people were 50-50 on it. They had 50-50. But BVS always had that, luring negative outlook on it. But more and more, I saw videos popping up. I changed my mind about BVS. We were wrong about BVS. I was wrong about this. I was wrong about that. So the Snyder Cut really is what encouraged, I think, most of the audience, or at least the people on the internet, to rewatch the movie with a different perspective and see it in a different way. And that brings us to our next film we're going to talk about. That is Spider-Man No Way Home, released in 2021. So when I first watched this movie, I was going into it expecting to see Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. And the movie gave me all those things in some pretty cool ways. So I was very excited about the movie when I watched it. I was saying it was amazing. But when I watched it a second time, the hype that I had from that had died down, and I started to see the really big problems that the movie had.
Right. And of course, you know what I said when I came out there.
Tell them what you said. What you said.
I thought it was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Worst superhero movies by a long ways. I still think that. I mean, yeah, of course I like Tobey Maguire the best in Spider-Man. And it was great that he was in there, but the way they had him in there was horrible. The story was horrible, didn't go anywhere. And they had stuff going on all over the place. It was just like, all right, let's just throw everybody in here and just to have them there. And we know the fans are going to love that. And that's all we need to do. But we don't need to have a good story.
Yes. And for those of you who have paid any attention to big franchises and movies nowadays, it seems like every single studio, every single franchise is trying to do the legacy sequel, the reboot, bringing the old actor back, bringing what was before to what is now in our modern time. And that leads to something that the internet calls fan service or Easter eggs. And it is reliance on fan service. It's relying on pleasing the fans with what they're familiar with instead of focusing on making a new story to work with. And that's why with Spider-Man No Way Home, in particular the first act, the writing was not good. And already they had written themselves into a corner with the first two. In particular with the second one, they had written themselves into a pretty bad spot with the MCU Spider-Man, unfortunately. So they had to have Doctor Strange come in. They rewrote his character and used him as a plot device
he was in there.
to get the movie going. Because realistically, the way that Doctor Strange was set up already in the MCU, he's already a defined character, he would never do that. And the first act of No Way Home is pretty much something you would see in a cartoon episode. like Ultimate Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
You'd see that Doctor Strange doing that, but not MCU Doctor Strange doing that.
Yeah.
And with even though there were some, as I said, some amazing moments that I really did enjoy with returning characters, that doesn't mean the movie overall is good.
Right.
It does not make the movie a good movie.
Right. Well, and that thing you're talking about, where I think this is happening all the time now, where movie studios know the fans are going to come see the movie no matter what. So they just throw stuff up there, and doesn't have to be a good story, doesn't have to be a well-shot movie. Just throw all the famous people in there and the famous characters, and they're going to make their money back, 2-3 times or more what they put into it. So that is definitely a problem with those kinds of movies these days.
Yes, and what happens with that is if people, I think audiences have always done this throughout, ever since movies have been a thing, ever since theaters have been a thing, cinema has been something that people go and entertain themselves with, is that they go into a movie with a checklist. And I'm not talking about the critics here, I'm talking about every audience member in some way goes in with a checklist. And it's a checklist of things they want the movie to give them, whether it's a feeling, a character, a certain story point. And they go in and they have this checklist and they're like, okay, is this movie going to give me what I want? And if the movie gives them what they want, even if it's a bad movie, they will say they loved it and encourage everybody else to see it and say it's great. But if the movie doesn't give them what they wanted, even if it is the best movie they've seen, they'll say it was a bad movie because it didn't give them what they wanted. And that leads to some, even among the critics on internet and Rotten Tomatoes, what I like to call like some very hypocritical ratings.
Right, because, it's hard to get a honest, critical review of something these days. Even people, the critics on YouTube, Rotten Tomato critics, it's almost like they're always trying to please their audience more than they are giving an honest critical review.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, okay. Yes, so that is, I think, really the main problem of what is going on now. We're really just with it, more so with the audience. Because I'm not a critic. I'm not trying to dictate what the critics do. But as an audience member, you as an audience member, people that I talk to, my friends, my family, and other people on the internet that are the audience members, they change their critique methods around if the movie gives them something that they already like. Because they might like what the movie gives them, but they aren't saying, okay, like, was it written well? Does this make sense? Would this character do this? And when it comes down to changing your perspectives on the movie, I'm not saying to people that the reason why you don't like a movie is because you aren't just seeing it from the right perspective. I say this because a movie like Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, exists. I tried to watch that movie again and again with a different perspective, and it's still a bad movie because it is a bad movie.
Yeah. So
I'm not saying that all you need to do is change your perspective. That's not at all what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's kind of lazy movie making. It's like, we know we're going to make money. Our primary reason is to make money. So let's just throw up there anything. We know the fans are going to like it, and we're going to make our money back, and it's easier this way. And it's like they've lost the goal of making good movies. So that's sad. I hope that turns around.
Yes, and I think from some stuff recently, people are starting to see that fan service probably isn't the right thing to look for. I think, in particular with Star Wars, people are seeing that because with Andor, most people don't even know it happened, and they don't even care. But with the people that watched it, they say that the series had no way to rely on fan service. So they were forced to try and write something good. And for what most people have been saying, it was good enough. Some people are saying it's amazing. I haven't watched it yet, so I can't say what I think about it. But I think people are starting to realize that, okay, maybe fan service isn't the main thing that I need to look for with a show or a movie.
Yeah, right. Which, of course, brings us back to our original point of this, is that Zack Snyder is about making a good movie.
Yes.
Right. no matter what. That's in him. He wants to do it. So he does it.
Yes, I think if I asked director Zack Snyder if he knew what the initial outlook on BVS was going to be, even with Man of Steel, he would say, I know exactly what it was going to be. He knew what he was doing.
And he didn't care.
Yes, and he didn't care. And it's very unfortunate that we're not going to see his Justice League 2.
Yeah.
His Justice League 3. And thank goodness we got to see his version of Justice League. That was
right.
like, even though we didn't see what we probably would have gotten, we saw the raw 4-hour version of it. We would have gotten like a 3 hour and 10 minute version, I think, if it would have been released in theaters. Mm-hmm. But he knew, like, people like him, I would say, they knew that, okay, I have something that I want to do, and I know that it's contrary to what the popular opinion of this character is, but I'm going to do it anyway. And they did it in a way to where, yes, it requires thinking. That's something else. People almost have always not wanted to think with movies. Because movies are amusement, they're entertainment, so the point is to escape. It's escapism. It's like with music, amusement parks, they don't want to think. But BVS doesn't let you do that. Mm-hmm. So already you're like, oh my gosh, I have to think about this. Oh my goodness. So with that, though, I mean, yeah, you'd be surprised of what you can figure out with what movies are trying to do if you think about really what they're doing. And that brings us to the end of episode 2. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and please remember to leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe for more content about movies. That's all for now, and I'll see you all in the next video.